Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and I have 5 more podcasts to recommend to you. These are just podcasts that I listen to on a weekly basis that I really enjoy. Let's jump straight into it. The first one that I'm going to recommend is one that I probably should have put in the romance book podcast recommendations, but I didn't, and that is the Fang Over podcast, which is hosted by Francesca and Suzanne from Under the Covers and Stephanie from Ideally Inspired Reviews. They focus primarily on paranormal romance books, and each host takes a turn in choosing a focus book for each episode. It's relatively new. There's only a handful of episodes out at the moment. I do follow Under the Covers on YouTube, so I was just very interested in following along with this, and it's been great so far. I would be remiss if I don't mention Death by the Books by Kirsty and Leanne from Literary Diversions. Kirsty and Leanne are friends of mine from the BookTube community, and they love books with death and murder in them, and they started this podcast ages ago. They haven't had a new episode for a while, but there are so many that you can go back and listen to, and they are fantastic, and there are so many book recommendations. If you think I read a lot, Kirsty reads way more than I do. What I really appreciate about their podcast as well is they have a blog to go along with each episode, and they have lists of all the books that they talk about in each episode, because I always forget when I'm listening, but I like to have a list to go back to and refer to as well. But they often review by theme. They did Death by Australia and Death by Urban Fantasy and Death by Halloween, I think was the title. I can't remember off the top of my head. But each episode is really fun, really interesting. They usually have 1 or 2 books that they have read together, as well as all the books that they're currently reading. Really great. Definitely worth checking out. Another one that I listen to is Words and Nerds, which is hosted by Danny V. This is an Australian book podcast. This often has books that I've never heard of, or I've heard of but wouldn't necessarily pick up myself. It's great. Danny asks really interesting, insightful questions of the people that she invites into her podcast, often the authors of particular books that she has a focus on. It's very easy to listen to. There's also Literary Elixirs, which is another Australian podcast. The host is Justine, and she invites authors or people who work in the industry onto her podcast, and they talk about books and the things that they're currently reading. And then she also asks her guests to choose 2 books and to pair them with a drink or food. And so you get a book recommendation along with a food and drink recommendation, which I think is a really cool concept. And finally, the last podcast that I listen to every week is Dear Hank and John, which is Hank and John Green. And there is something very soothing about this podcast, even though the 2 of them are kind of manic, really, to listen to. But they just talk about everyday random stuff. They have people who write in questions to them and they answer them. And then there's always a segment on soccer and, I don't know, I'm going to get shot because I know that it's technically football or whatever, but soccer and news from Mars. The format is just comforting because it's the same every week with just different random topics of conversation, and these guys are smart. The way that they think about these questions and the way they were able to inject humor is impressive. So I really enjoy listening to this podcast. So that is my second round of podcast reviews. If I come up with any others, I will do another round. I will do another video of this whenever I have enough podcasts to talk about. In the comments below, let me know what are other podcasts that you listen to. I know last time I asked you to recommend any romance book podcasts, but if there's something else that you listen to that you really enjoy, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.